theoretically, we could be live.
Are you alive?
I feel mostly live-esque, live-like.
Johnny 5 is alive.
Oh my! Johnny number 5. Oh,
no.
Yes.
Oh God!
One of
you
my
want to talk about
voices?
Oh, God, that guy.
I sobbed so much in that movie. Probably one of the sequels, actually, like deeply.
The sequel is so upsetting. They like beat him with an axe.
I know,
it's horrible.
It's awful.
For people who are just joining us, we're talking about a movie called Short Circuit. Yeah. And if you're not old enough, you didn't grow up in the 80s, you probably don't know what the hell we're talking about. True. But hey, welcome to the apocalypse, everyone. This is the Enlightened Couch Potato podcast. I'm Nicholas Rave, and
I'm Adrianne Gunn.
And we are here to talk about how to watch movies and TV for maximum psychological and spiritual development.
I like it when you say it, because you can.
I've been saying it for a couple of years now. So I had this idea in my head long before we came up with Enlightened Couch Potato as a name. So
sure, yeah. I have been practicing. I also thought it'd be fun at some point, if I don't happen to get it into my face soon, that maybe we'll just do a live induction of you installing my ability to say the phrase.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because he's a hypnotherapist.
Repetition is the mother of skill.
Punchline there.
And also repetition is the mother of skill. What, you've never heard that before?
I have. I just haven't heard it today.
Okay. I like that one. Yeah, so, hey, Adrianne, what you been watching?
What have I been watching? So, honestly, it's fun that we are doing this show where we help people understand that they could be watching television deeply and getting meaning from it. I have actually found myself, I don't know if listless, fidgety. I've been finding myself pausing my TV a lot and then finding that I'm on my phone and then something amazing happened in the show. I haven't been watching as deeply as I can. The last week has been filled with kind of catching up on the serials that I watch regularly. So I watched Batwoman, Supergirl, Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow is one of my favorites, actually.
Man, you're keeping up with all 4 of the DC universe.
Somewhat begrudgingly. I jumped in because I loved Arrow. Arrow was just huge, amazing television. Season 2 of Arrow introduced a whole bunch of like kick-ass female warriors and the traditions have sort of carried forward in the other DC comic shows. And then they started doing all these crossovers, which sort of meant to get all the
you have to be watching
jokes,
the whole thing.
I have to be caught up. So if you've watched before, you recognize that I don't particularly enjoy a heavy-handed kind of show when it comes to what is it? The word jumps out of my head. Representation of people from
that's
cultures,
right. Yeah,
and sexuality and all kinds.
When you
of
feel like things are being shoehorned in, yeah. So
Supergirl's one of those shows that tends to be like really heavy-handed with their message in a way that's. I don't think it serves the point that they're making. So
it's lazy. It's like dangling keys in front of somebody and being like, you said something progressive. That means it's good. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah. So one of the episodes of that show did that this recent week, and that was hard. I also triggered I was not feeling amazing, and then I watched Batwoman, which is actually pretty wonderfully dark. I just thought it was going to be an awful show.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I love her. Like, oh my God, I was so excited when they cast her. No, the Batwoman.
People seem to like Ruby Rose.
Yeah.
I don't think she's as awful as Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, ouch. Okay. Wow.
People seem to like Scarlett Johansson.
Put the claws away.
I like Scarlett a lot when she's not talking, when she's just moving around doing stuff. So like, what is it? Captain America.
Have you ever seen Under the Skin?
I have not.
Yeah, well, she barely speaks in that movie.
Is it great?
It is great. It's extremely dark and weird, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind her when she speaks. So,
Yeah,
did you see Vicky Cristina Barcelona?
I think I might have.
It's really not a great, fun movie about sort of polyamorous relationships ish.
Right.
Yeah. But it's I thought that was the one when I was like, oh shit, she can actually act. She's not just beautiful.
I might have actually enjoyed her in that. And it's, again, rarer for me. I really like her in the Avengers. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about her. Actually, movie. I saw a trailer for what is it?
Black Widow.
Black Widow. I saw a trailer for that. And what I like about it is it actually looks more like an ensemble movie.
Yeah.
Than a her movie, which I think is a really smart move. Because Anywho, so I thought Batwoman would also be a really, really skinny person who doesn't actually look like she can accomplish the things that she's doing, which is another frustration of mine. But what's really great about it is it's not lighthearted. I love that it's not lighthearted. I love that. That particular day this week that I watched it, I was not feeling awesome. And it was really freaking dark. I love the villain. The villain in this show, Batwoman, is one of the best villains that DC Comics has created.
Who's the villain? Not the actor, but what's the character? Alice
is the character's name. And oh my gosh, it's Rachel. I think it's Scarsden is her name. She was Tamsin in Lost Girl, and I love that show. That's one of the recommends. Anywho, I recalled that I was feeling awful, and then I pressed this show, and I forgot because it'd been some months since I've watched it that it's a darker show. So I felt even more awful after watching it. I was like, oh yeah. I could probably be watching things that are more lighthearted, which is why I started watching Netflix show. I think The Politician looked kind of funny and lighthearted. I did have an emotional experience during one of the scenes.
In The Politician?
Yeah. So The Politician is this show. I guess it's this kid. He's this high school student who's determined to become the president of the United States. And right now, he's a wealthy kid. Going to a wealthy private
How old?
School. He's probably a senior because he wants to be the class president. So he wants to go to Harvard, super driven. And this is the adventure of him running his campaign for class president.
Yeah.
And there was a scene in there. I don't know if do you have theories about when people die or leave this earth or world or plane? Are you, Nicholas, one of those people that feels like they're always with us, that they're still here?
In a way, yes.
Yeah. So I had a really favorite person die a while back, 5 years ago. And everybody kept saying things like, you can still talk to that person, or, they're always here. And there are people who have theories, and I have not had this person show up in my dreams. I didn't have ghost visits in places. It just has not been the case for me that there are signs of that person being around. And so in this show, there's somebody, in a lot of shows, there are people who die or pass away, and then they show up in scenes. I mean, that's one of the things that's crazy and fun about the multiverse stuff in superhero shows is no one ever really dies. There's that concept, and it plays out over and over again. So if you're watching something and somebody's really gone, it's weird, especially if it's sci-fi or that sort of thing. So there's a moment where this person who had passed away comes back and starts talking, or it's like a scene that he's replaying in his mind where that person is with them and helping him breathe and prepare for a moment.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, I was watching it and I was like, oh, and it was so beautiful and calming. And I'm just like, oh, that's a tender, important person to him. How really cool. I want to know more about how that relationship was cultivated and what heck happened. You know, I'm just like, I only want these scenes. Screw the annoying, dumb, petty, you know, running for the thing scenes. Let's just only make a show about these moments. And what was interesting, and what I think is interesting for any of us watching television, is our unconscious mind can pull out and make meaning in these moments. We're like, oh, all of these characters come back to us and they speak to us again. We don't have to lose them. And I realized that one of the things that could have been happening for me was that actually my friend was back for me in that moment.
That's beautiful.
And that is my punchline.
I do have a theory on that. Are you surprised? Did I almost make you spit out your water?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not surprised. I'd love to hear about it.
So, listen, the way I look at this is if you believe in ghosts, fine, then don't listen to what I'm about to say, because you already have a theory that lets you tap into this resource. So I look at people who are able to talk to those who have passed on, to talk to their ancestors, to talk to their lost loved ones, etc. Those people have an advantage in some ways to people who aren't able to do that. So if you already believe in ghosts or spirits, or you believe that there's another side or another plane of existence where these people pass on to, and then you can still connect with them, great. You already have a working strategy. So ignore this. I'm speaking to people right now who have a skeptical part of their brain that won't let them go in that direction. And that's me. So for me, the way that I look at it is understanding what I do about the unconscious mind. What I have come to understand is that when we're relating to each other, when we're here, like right now, you and I are relating to each other, or we think we're relating to each other. But in reality, most people, most of the time, aren't really connecting with another person. You're connecting to a representation of that person that you have in your own head. Mm-hmm. And this is true about all of life, not just people. Like, we're not really relating to life. We're relating to our internal representation of life being represented to us by our unconscious mind.
Yes.
So my view is that if most of the time when I think I'm relating to you, I'm really just relating to a construct in my own unconscious, then if you die, that construct isn't gone.
True.
So when I think of a person existing and always being with us, what I think of is that the other side is the world of imagination. And that's not diminishing to me. That doesn't make it less. It's more that I take all of life and say, all of this is mostly imaginary. So for me to then take someone who has passed on from this mortal coil, and then continue to relate to them, that person and my relationship with them can even continue to grow and evolve and change. And they become a different person. It's just not informed by that person's existence in the physical anymore. To me, the difference is I just don't think that it exists anywhere outside of my own unconscious mind. But that doesn't make it less real. It doesn't make it less powerful or useful for me.
Yeah. The bigger interesting thing, which is a whole rabbit hole of it, when we realize that the people in our lives, whether they're here or not, mm-hmm. that we aren't actually experiencing them, we're just representing them in our head. Mm-hmm. If you compile on, okay, you had a dream that they were in, or even your entire life of experience them is a dream that they were in.
Yeah.
Or if you're having conversations with them in your head that suddenly when you see them in person, they know nothing about. It gets really interesting to actually connect with actual people who happen to somehow suddenly show you something that's very, very different than the version of them that you have connection with that's on the inside of your head. It's
absolutely
painful. And so I don't know, it's like several levels of meta relationship with everyone you have a relationship with.
Yeah. I think for most people, they don't allow the person to show up different than they expect them to show up.
Yeah.
And to me, a lot of authentic relating is figuring out how to get to the place where you can be surprised by everything that a person says to you. And be like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Like, I don't know what you're going to say next. You don't know what I'm going to say next, even though that's not how it feels most of the time for most people.
Totally. I think that was one of the challenges with my belief when people would tell me that I could still engage with this friend, because that friend in particular, her specialty was I never knew what she was going to say. She had access to language that no one else uses. And she almost always surprised me. So I'm not sure how my unconscious mind could conjure of that, because I never knew. And it was always the coolest thing. And I had no clue where it came from. So it's kind of fun that it pops out in these shows.
Yeah.
Because then I didn't have to think of it or create it myself. Yeah. And I still get to sort of the joy of like, oh, that's kind of like her. Good times.
Well, I have found a lot of value in learning to cultivate that same kind of surprise with my own unconscious. That to realize that my unconscious, one way to look at it is the reason why your unconscious mind should be your best friend is because literally everything you love, your unconscious is also into that. Like, there's no one in the universe that you have more in common with than your unconscious mind. And in a sense, your unconscious mind is also the one who liked her.
Oh, yeah.
Your unconscious mind is also the one that was capable of recognizing the way that she communicated and was the one who liked it. So my hypothesis is that it's possible to get to a place where your unconscious is an entity that you can connect with that can surprise you more than anyone, and that you can be like, where in the hell did that come from? But it requires a kind of letting go of this idea that I already know everything that's going on in here.
Hey, I just want to let you and your unconscious mind, Nicholas, know that we're going to do an episode where we teach people how to begin to have a new relationship with their unconscious mind. I mean, we're trickling it out, but I want you to know, and I want your unconscious mind to know that we're actually going to dedicate specific time for that.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Can you tell?
Yeah. Hey, what are you watching?
Okay, yeah. I finished Altered Carbon. Finally. It was good. It was it was maybe not as good as the first season.
It did deliver on my request for more athletic looking people-sized people kicking ass.
Sure.
Which you didn't know.
I'm not sure how the first season didn't have that, but
skinny naked people fighting.
Oh, you didn't like that. Oh, you wanted. Okay, I get what you mean. Yeah. So I wanted to comment on that. Did you see Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron?
I have not. Wait. No, that's the one she's in Russia.
Yeah, it's like John Wick with Charlize Theron.
Yeah, I started it, but I was finding it. I don't know. I'm bored. I didn't want to read, or something happened. I didn't finish. I'm in the middle.
Yeah, I have that same thing where I'm like, as soon as there is a 128-pound woman fighting two 230-pound guys, I'm like, okay, this is fantasy. We're talking fantasy stuff here, and yeah. I know that a lot of people even consider that right there to be an offensive concept.
I know. So I know that there are ridiculously thin people who are stronger than I am and stronger than they look. I believe it. I know that's a truth. And having been a collegiate athlete, I know that athletes that are capable of doing, female athletes that are capable of doing things that we see in movies are fucking meaty and muscly and awesome. And I love it when more athletic women are the ones who are kicking butt. It just feels better to me.
You want to talk about like inclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like diversity of body types. So did you see The Mandalorian?
Gina Carano. I've loved her. She's
so fucking real and bad. Like she's someone you look at and I'm like, she could wipe the floor with me.
Yeah.
And you know it. And I'm like, more roles for her and people like that. Like stunt women should be getting more. Oh yeah. And it's great.
I forget what it's called. I own it.
I just heard, somebody was just talking about this. It's got Channing Tatum in it and a bunch of other people, right?
It's
it's about assassins.
It's my favorite.
And it's like movie. Steven Soderbergh or something like that. Yes. It's a big, and it's so good. So fucking
Did Haywire?
Oh yeah. Good job.
I
win. But not Barbed Wire. Have you ever seen that movie?
I don't know.
Oh shit. Who is it? Jenna Jameson, I want to say. Or no, Pamela Anderson. It's Pamela Anderson. Sorry. Pamela Anderson plays in this post-apocalyptic Mad Max-ish future, and it is terrible as you could possibly imagine right now in this moment.
I have seen that. Oof. Gina Carano is amazing. I remember she was Storm in the reboot of American Gladiators, hosted by Hulk Hogan and is it Tatiana Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter, who's a boxer? They came back. The first person who won that was from Portland, but she was like, she was Storm. She was beefy. What was that? 2000 something? American Gladiators came back. Yeah, more of that.
Yeah, I hear you completely. Like there's a believability thing that's like at that point you just have to go, this is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Like people are flying and like this is not meant to be realistic.
Right.
But I mean, you got to do that with a lot of kung fu movies and like fighting stuff in general.
I don't mind it if they put tiny people with swords or things that makes it seem like, oh yeah, that could do you if you slice somebody who's giant. Yeah. That'll suck for them.
Yeah.
You move super fast and get out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but Altered Carbon is okay.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was very, very good. I enjoyed it. I think that there was a few concepts. There wasn't a lot of like, I was not able to identify with a lot of deep philosophical themes that weren't present in the first one. And that's kind of my point is like, it was good, but it was more plot and not thematic or mythological. And there was questions in the first one that were very kind of Westworldy in the like, what is consciousness? What does it mean to have a self? What does it mean to be you? And how are you distinct from your memories and experiences? Are you distinct from your memories and experiences? And then they kind of touched on it, like they had a moment when they started talking about like body memories and the idea that like things could be in your body. And I was like, ooh, are they going to go somewhere cool and different? And then not really. But so it was good. But the main thing that happened this week is once we finished, we finished 30 Rock too.
Oh, wow.
Which was a long journey, but holy shit, was it funny. Like, oh my God, that show is really quite brilliant and really, really enjoyable all the way to the end. And once we finished that, my wife and my girlfriend and I decided to start watching a show that I've seen 2 times already. I watched it all the way through once. Mm-hmm. Then I introduced Liz to it and watched it all the way through again. And now we're introducing Lindsay to it and we're going to watch it all the way through again.
Yeah.
And it's one of my all-time favorite sci-fi shows. And it's called Farscape. Have you ever heard of Farscape?
I have heard of Farscape.
Okay, so Farscape is, some people call it like if you love Firefly and you are sad that there aren't more seasons, watch fucking Farscape. I tend to think of it as, it's actually more similar to what I love about Star Wars than what I love about Firefly. Although there are some similarities for sure, but it's definitely got this like familiar sci-fi structure where most episodes are about a self-contained plot that has a beginning, middle, and end, and they go on adventures. And then there's these through themes, and much more so than something like Star Trek, there is actual character journey. Like by the time you get to the end, they have changed and grown and shifted in a lot of ways that it's really interesting to see over that time. So I wanted to talk about one specific theme that was really profound, and just this isn't spoiling anything because you find this out in the very first episode.
Yeah.
But it's something that I found as I was sitting down and just being like, oh my God, I'm so excited to watch this again. And I was thinking about why was this so special to me, and how has this show informed aspects of my growth and philosophy. And the big one was this: the main characters spend the majority of the show on a ship called a Leviathan, and the ship is alive. It's actually like a whale that they are inside of, and we are like cell-sized to this ship, or maybe not quite that small, but the idea is that this ship is symbiotic with the people inside of it, and it doesn't really want to go anywhere, but it wants to, it has nowhere that it wants to go specifically, but it wants to go places. Yeah. And it needs the people inside of it to make the decisions about where to go. And the ship it gets sick sometimes, and it needs to be taken care of. And there's times when it's very rebellious against what they want to go do, and it doesn't always cooperate. So at the time that I was going through this the last time was when I was really obsessed with and thinking about the nature of the self, the nature of consciousness, the nature of the relationship between the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the body. And this show, one of the things that I realized was that it informed this view that I have of myself, my conscious self, the part of my mind that I'm aware of, the one that thinks, that is having this conversation right now, although I do my best to try to step out of the way and let my unconscious handle most of this. Right. That conscious self is not me. It's not the entirety of me. It's a passenger. I am a passenger inside my body, inside my unconscious mind. And that view has changed how I am able to relate to other people, how I'm able to work through trauma, to make changes. That is probably one of the single most important elements of getting hypnosis and NLP and all these other things that I've studied to work for me, was understanding when you say, when someone says, I'm so angry with myself, there are two people in that sentence. I am angry with myself. So we walk through life confused about who's talking. Who are you talking about? And this show, that was something that I couldn't stop thinking about the last time I went through. I don't know what I'm going to get out of it this time. Yeah. But that, and that I will admit, full disclosure, that theme is something I look for in almost everything that I watch. And any show or movie that I can see that theme being represented, this idea of the self and the unconscious world, and those tend to be stories that I gravitate to. Yeah. But I think that's because that's part of my lesson in this life, is to get clarity on that. It's a puzzle I'm trying to solve. It's a it's Rubik's Cube. I didn't have that sitting there on purpose. That I'm constantly thinking about, like obsessively.
Yeah. That was, so you brought up, Farscape, you brought up Westworld, which also talks a lot about consciousness and what is it. I think also Battlestar Galactica has a bit of that.
I haven't seen the whole thing.
Ooh.
I know people are like one of the greatest sci-fi shows of all time, and I haven't sat down. I think part of the problem is I found out the end.
Oh, balls.
Before I started it, and I was like, I already know where it goes, and like that is not a twist for me.
Well, couldn't you allow yourself to forget it?
I think I will at some point.
Put your memory, put it in a box, box, and stick it somewhere.
And send that box to myself, and then smash it with a hammer.
What?
No.
Where's that from?
That's from one of the movies I have seen more than any other movie in my life. It's a Disney movie called Emperor's New Groove.
Oh shit! Okay,
it's phenomenal. That movie was so ahead of its time, and
is
David
that the one
Spade,
with the no
John
touching,
Goodman.
No touch?
Yeah, no
touching, no touch. Yeah.
There's so many random moments in that. I love that movie a lot.
Well, so returning to this show, one of the things we wanted to accomplish was talking about the kinds of things you may want to be watching in this challenging adventure that we are now in COVID-19.
So recommended viewing for the quarantine.
So an overarching is perhaps this would be a great time for you to revisit something that you already love, that you know you love, so that there could be something in your life that's familiar. As you know, every hour or two or every day, something new or something different happens. At least that's how it's felt in my world. Every day there's something slightly new and different and unexpected, and I have no idea what's going to happen. Most people are like, we have no idea. That is not common for us to not have any idea what the next day is going to bring.
So it's like the world right now is uncertain enough. It might be good for some people to revisit shows that are more like comfort food and are reliable. And you're like, I know where this is going. Bob's Burgers is one for me that I revisit. I think I've watched Bob's Burgers. I've done Rick and Morty more than once. Futurama. Probably a show that I've watched like 3 or 4 times, just because that's like a put it on in the background for me. And like, I want something that I know I'm going to enjoy, but I don't want to be challenged right now. I don't want to be uncertain.
I'm really glad that you said Futurama out loud, because I could not strip from my brain that my brain thinks that Farscape and Futurama are the same thing.
No.
I'm like, he keeps saying Farscape, and I'm like, yes, that is a show.
Farscape is a live action sci-fi show that was produced in part by the Jim Henson Company. So one of the things that's awesome about it, and one of the things that always kind of made me roll my eyes about Star Trek, is that aliens basically meant people with various things glued to their face, like humanoid aliens with some kind of mask or costume or just a little thing between their eyebrows, which is fine, whatever, that's their universe. But I like Star Wars in that, where you're like creatures, like weird. And in Farscape, most of the creatures are practical. They build them, and then they're puppets and stuff. And like, you just freaking buy it. You spend enough time with these puppets where they're these alien creatures that you start to just like, you don't see the puppet at all anymore. And you see the actors relating much better than people do to like green screen, where you're like, I'm acting to a tennis ball.
Yeah.
And when they're actually in the space and they're talking, the eye line is correct. And it's just the CG that they do use for space stuff is a little hokey. It looks like video game graphics.
Right.
But the characters and the set design, not to mention like the relationships and yeah, it's awesome. I freaking love that show.
I just had a little play in my head while you were doing that. I was like, oh yeah, and also Farscape is not apparently Stargate.
No,
I was going to be like, wasn't that a movie?
Stargate is another show. There's actually Stargate the movie, which is super fun, popcorn blockbuster.
Yeah.
And then there's Stargate SG-1, the TV show, which there's also some offshoots of that one. I watched all of Stargate SG-1 and I enjoyed it. I would not put it up there with Farscape or even Star Trek, although there's definitely some cool stuff in it.
I just smooshed all three of those in my head, though, is where they
okay, well, now we've separated them.
Perfect.
Okay, so are we transitioning to talking about our recommended viewing for the quarantine and the apocalypse viewing?
Yes.
Okay. You want to go first?
We
have two very different lists.
My lists are essentially the things you could watch that have a sense of potentially joy or hope, may create a sense of joy and hope. And many of them are, I think that all of the themes are here are people in difficult situations and they find their way through, and it's also enjoyable to watch. So let's see, my television shows, I will attempt to pop through these quickly because I know you have a shorter list than I do. So the shows, The 100, Revolution.
Hold on. Sell me on each one. Just you're going to do it afterwards. Okay. Sorry. I thought you were just going to list them and be like, no. I don't know these shows, so.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, okay. The shows The 100, Revolution, Sense8, and Lost Girl are all the kinds of shows where people are found in extreme situations and then they get themselves through it. Eureka, I'll talk about it first.
I've heard about that.
Eureka is a lovely show where there's a marshal who finds himself suddenly in a town filled with scientists. It's this secret town filled with scientists doing extreme experiments. A town that is a collection of all of the best minds of math and science and engineering are sheltered in this secret town called Eureka. And this marshal travels through and suddenly becomes the sheriff. For reasons, he becomes the sheriff of this town full of people who create things that nearly destroy the world every couple of minutes. And
this has been on my list for a long time.
It's a bit deadly do, right? It's just this like jolly, wonderful person. So the reason why I bring it up for the sakes of joy and hope is because every other couple of minutes, something disastrous could potentially happen because there are all of these brilliant people up to good, no good, things that could destroy the planet over and over and over again happen. And this sheriff, who is not a scientist, he is smart enough and yet just sort of like earnest. This show is earnest. I think that might be the best way of describing. And I think for the most part, people tend to survive. And I think every time I watched the show, I just felt like joy and glee emanating from the center of my chest. Chuck is another show.
I watched.
Where joy, emanating joy, it is lighthearted and playful. I don't know if I've talked about this. So Chuck is a show where what is he? A gentleman who works as a computer tech in a big box store.
He works at Best Buy.
Yeah, but they call it something else.
Even though they can't say it.
Yeah, he's a Geek Squad agent, except he's not a Geek Squad agent. So he thinks he's playing a video game or something, but he suddenly downloads the entire database spy computer. This like a huge AI. So he has somehow downloaded the entire contents of some underground organization's spy computer. So he has all of the intelligence of the world. And he can also, it turns out, sometimes access some of that and use it suddenly. So I think two different, the CIA and an FBI agent find him, and then suddenly he's the computer. They lost the computer, so now they need him to do all of the spy things. I remember
loving this show so much.
It's so good. It's so good. So he has to save the world every day. And I think my favorite thing about it is that the most capable spy and ass kicker in the show is this woman, and he is the damsel in distress for quite a long while. Yvonne
something, I can't remember how to say her last name, but my God, she's so fantastic.
She's really good in that.
Yeah.
Do you want to interrupt me with some? Oh, yours are different.
Yeah, no. Finish your list.
Okay, so the 100. The 100 is nuclear fallout. Humans have to escape in spaceships, and at some point, all of the space stations decide to form together to share resources, and they call that the Ark. And the plan was, as they assembled together all these space stations, they were going to have 100 years worth of supplies and then return back to the Earth. But 60 years have passed, and they have maybe 6 months left, maybe less, 6 weeks, 3 months left of resources, and they have to figure out what to do next. So they decide to send 100 of their juvenile delinquents who are in their space jail down to Earth to find out if it's inhabitable. So they toss 100 of their juvenile delinquents down to Earth. They send them down.
Like they don't know if they're going to die or not.
I have no idea if they're going to die or not.
And they're young people.
Yeah, they surmised all of their smart math and figure-outer types were like 100 years, and then the Earth will be inhabitable. But they were like, well, we're out of our resources at 60. Oops. Let's just see. And so those 100 juvenile delinquents land on Earth, and then they discover they're not alone.
Oh,
so what's fascinating about this particular show, and I think is revolutionary, is that I know that we're in a phase now where we start to see villains and the way that they make decisions, and we've shifted in some of how we tell stories. But oftentimes a story or a television show is generally positioned from one perspective. Usually there or like a group and their perspective. It's us against whoever. This is the first show that I've watched that does a really amazing job of helping you to sympathize and appreciate that every single person is making the best decision that they can with the resources that they have. I don't think I've ever seen a show that does that so beautifully and in such an entertaining way, where they give you the sense of why anyone makes even the most horrifying choices that in shows that had been before, you would have been like, oh, that person's awful. You've been like, oh God, I might have done that same thing. And it does it over and over and over again. That's one of the things.
So three-dimensional characters, no two-dimensional mustache twirling villains. Nope. I always talk about that as shows that are gray, or movies that are gray. And they're not dark. And they're not light either. Like, they're very gray, and life is gray to me. They're much more real. Oddly, as fantasy and out there as it is, I always kind of felt that way about Once Upon a Time.
Yes, that is one of the things that it does. Absolutely.
That was one of the first shows that I remember seeing where every time there was a mustache twirling villain, eventually they would come up with some way to explain their backstory, and you'd be like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful healing experience.
I think I watched Once Upon a Time and The 100 around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that stuff.
The 100 is it's a heavier, darker thing. It's not so lighthearted, but it's that finding ways to motivate everyone's choices is huge. Yeah.
It's got some post-apocalyptic themes, though. That's good.
Yeah.
That fits in with my list.
Yeah. Then there's the show The Revolution. I think I Googled it to find out where you could find it. I think it's only on NBC, or you can buy it on Amazon right now.
Is the Revolution the one where the power goes out?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the states are divided. And so it's a post-apocalyptic thing too. And you get to see
it was a cool premise. I never saw it, but I remember seeing the trailers for it and being like, ooh, that looks interesting.
Yeah. I think it just mostly follows this particular family. And Revolution, the power goes out. There's an EMP that shuts down everything. So it's not just the power goes out. The EMP breaks all of technology. And then there are different revolutions that change the shape of where the states are and who's in the leadership. And so the country is divided.
Oh, revolutions? You mean it's like a metaphor?
Multiple. Yeah. And so you follow these people figuring out how to survive in that space. Sense8's interesting. And these are like, you could feel good, but like in a shitstorm, right? Each one of these has that sort of theme. It's like, oh, there's danger. Sense8 is suddenly on their 28th birthday, this group of 8 people from different countries suddenly shares a psychic connection. And as they discover how that's fascinating and interesting and useful and weird as F, they become hunted by a secret covert organization that wants to have them be extinct. And so what's interesting about this show is it's one of the first ones where I found myself literally like leaping off of my couch and cheering and suddenly dancing and singing out loud with a television. I don't think I've ever jumped up and started dancing in the middle of my living room to anything I've ever watched. And since
it's high praise.
So it is gorgeous. It is beautiful. It is the scenery is gorgeous. It's so beautiful. It's probably why it's not around anymore. It's very expensive to make.
Yeah. Because
they had to shoot the way that they do the sharing of psychic connection. Thinking of that in the technological aspects of like how many takes that they would have to do from different perspectives. Wow.
I can't believe I haven't seen this show yet. So many people have said that it's great, and it's the freaking Wachowskis. Like that to me is like they're easily in the top 3 filmmakers for me, and they've certainly had missteps, but I don't necessarily blame them for them.
Yeah.
But that one has to be on my list. Like that's going to be one that I'm going to watch, and then we're going to pontificate, and we could even do like an episode by episode breakdown of it. If you're interested when I get around to it. Sure.
And the last thing I'll talk about is Lost Girl. Lost Girl is more playful. It sort of fits into the sort of Buffy Xena world of. So how do I describe this? A succubus has lived. I'll start again.
Sorry. That's not where I thought it was going to start.
A succubus has lived her entire life not knowing who she is or why she has the powers that she has. I think she's about 28 as well, when she discovers that there is an underground world of Fae, powered people, and the Fae have divided themselves into light Fae and dark Fae. And once they've discovered her and she's discovered them, they are trying to get her to pick a side. So she ends up becoming kind of like a private eye type. She decides she doesn't want to align. This all happens in the first episode, by the way. So
okay.
She doesn't realize that she's powered. She has no idea how to utilize herself. So it's the adventure of having someone discover who she really is and what she's fully capable of.
Yeah.
And have to figure out whether she's light, whether she's dark, because all Fae, in some way or another, feed off of humans, their energy or their body parts, or some way that the Fae and the humans are interconnected. And so what's fun about this show is it revisits a whole bunch of fairy tales and magical creatures that you may have heard of, and it plays around with them. It's also sort of a supernatural buddy cop show because she does play the private detective. And then also every now and then the world is going to end. So very like Buffy, in the sense that there's this group of people who are differently powered, attempting to figure out how to like continue to live. And
so a little supernatural thrown in there too.
Yes. Also, it's pretty sexy.
Well, you started with succubus. So.
Yes. Succubus feeds off of sexual energy and exchanges sexual energy. And so...
Well, this show just jumped up to the top of my list.
Yes, it really should be at the top of many people's lists because...
I haven't even heard of this.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah, it's a Canadian show. It's on Netflix.
Show. Canadian show.
I watch a lot of Canadian shows. And this was
that sounds
one of my
great.
favorites that I think I've watched it 3 times now.
How, is it finished?
Oh yeah. I think they did 5.5. So I think it's 6 seasons, but
does it like end badly? Like
no, it actually ends kind of epically. They take it somewhere.
I hate it when shows are like, when they're just about to like wrap something up and then they get canceled. That sucks.
It gets weird in season 4. And then they pick some really interesting things. I love it when shows figure out who they are and then they make fun of themselves for a season. So there's a really delightful one of those. And then,
okay. All right. And then you sold me.
Ratchet up. There's a way in which it doesn't end well because it just ends too soon because they finally find their groove. And then they have to figure out a way to like shut it down because of money or whatever reason things are canceled. Okay.
Well, I was already sold on Sense8. And I've already seen Chuck and I freaking loved it. I did feel like Chuck got a little long in the tooth near the end in the last season or 2, which I'm not even sure I finished it. But the first 3-4 seasons, oh my God, it's delightful.
Yeah, it's really good.
Eureka is definitely one that like when it comes to like just popcorn, like who gives a shit kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's one that I've thought about and I'd completely forgot about.
Yes.
But Lost Girl.
Just
Lost Girl. I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
And you sold me. So okay. Can I change gears here and then we'll probably have to wrap up?
Yeah, are you not? Oh, you're changing gears. Yes, do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna change gears here, and I'm gonna give another list of recommended viewing. But this one comes with a big caveat, asterisk, warning list, warning label. I'm calling this 6 movies to watch during the apocalypse if you're a masochist, and specifically in the virus outbreak kind of apocalypse that we currently find ourselves in. And I say apocalypse jokingly.
Yeah.
So I came up with a list. There's actually a lot more than this. And I will say it entered into the world of zombie movies very quickly. So I was careful with that one because I was just like, I'm not going to make, I could have made this like 20 movies if I included zombie movies. So
yes.
I did include one, but I'm just going to say personal preference for what I think is the best one to be watching right now. So these are movies that if you want to have an experience of like diving deeper into, like I often find that movies, scary movies, things like that are almost like they're a contrast frame where like going someplace worse than where we are, it allows you to sort of inoculate yourself emotionally to what we are going through right now. And that's one of my favorite strategies for coping with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So the obvious ones I'll start with first there's a movie called Contagion with Gwyneth Paltrow and a bunch of other great actors. really hard to watch, just to be clear, but it's also, and it's not entirely scientifically accurate. So there's a couple of good articles written about it where if you want to go and be like, here's where they took artistic liberties. But there's a lot of stuff in it that you're like, oh, fuck. Like, that's what we're going through right now. So that one's good. It's a good movie. A movie that I remember watching when I was quite a bit younger, and I really enjoyed, largely because it has one of my all-time favorite actors in it, is a movie called Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman. That one is about a coronavirus specifically, that somebody gets from, I think, from a bat, if I remember correctly. And there's a monkey involved too. So it's kind of like the bat pangolin thing, but this one was like bat monkey, and then somebody got it from there. And another very highly dramatized version of this same kind of thing. But a great movie, really fun. Again, not scientifically accurate in a whole lot of ways, even more so than Contagion. Okay, now we get weird.
Okay, weird.
Because those are the obvious ones. Sure. The next one is a movie that I holds a very special place in my heart because I watched it with my dad when I was like pretty young, fairly, and it was a little disturbing at the time, but it's very dated. It's a movie called The Andromeda Strain. And I think it's a Michael Crichton movie. I could be wrong on that one. I want to say that's the case.
Yeah.
And the plot line is that something comes back from, like a virus or contagion of some sort comes back from space, and it's something we've never seen before. And I remember it making a really big impression on me as a kid, and really like having this idea of a contagion gone loose. That was like the first time I'd ever been exposed to any of those ideas. And I think it's from the 70s. So it's got a very different sensibility than current modern films. If you watch movies from the 70s, they're a lot more slow paced.
Sure.
But I do find that to be quite hypnotic. And I think people had attention spans back then that if you watch movies from back then and you let yourself surrender to the pacing of the movie, it can actually grow your attention span. It can actually be good for your ability to go into trance. So Andromeda Strain, I love that movie. I think it's super fun. Well, let's do our zombie movie. Okay. The one zombie movie that I decided to pick is called 28 Days Later. That one is it definitely leans into the Contagion kind of version of the zombies. And I think that was the first movie with fast zombies. Made them much scarier. They were running zombies instead of your typical brains kind of zombies. Right. Good acting, really scary and intense movie. But I enjoyed it a lot. Some very challenging emotional parts. Also, there's a lot of stuff about like how easy it is to catch. And there's like some pretty heartbreaking moments about that I really enjoyed. Okay, two more. This one is arguably not a Contagion type movie, but I definitely love it for this kind of thing, and an incredible work of art. Children of Men. Have you ever seen it or heard of it?
Maybe.
So it's about a future where it's been like 18 years or something since no one could get pregnant. Mm-hmm. The whole planet, no one can have babies anymore. So the youngest person on the planet is like 18 years old. And they're basically, the whole world has started to collapse because everybody's like, this is the end. Like, there's nothing we can do. And then plot ensues. But the filmmaking, the acting, the writing, the depth of this world, like, it's so real. It's so well made. Like, this is probably the best movie of all of these movies. And there's a scene in particular that is done where they're trying to escape in a car while all these people are coming from the woods and trying to like attack them while they're in the car.
Yeah.
And the entire shot is done in one take.
Oof.
And the camera, they do some trickery, some visual effects trickery to do it, but the camera goes outside the car, spins around the car while everybody is running in from the sides, goes into the car, and then like turns around, shows you what's going on inside the car, and then goes back out again. And it's fucking seamless. Like that is one of the most incredible shots in movie history. It's so amazing to watch. I love that movie. Great movie, and has definitely a sense of hopefulness at the end. Okay, last one. This is one of my guilty pleasure favorite movies of all time. It's such a weird sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
It's called 12 Monkeys.
I think I've seen it. I don't know that I remember it.
Bruce Willis. I want to say it's like Terry Gilliam or something who directed it, who does a lot of very like weird fantasy, surreal type movies. So it has moments that are very surreal.
Brad Pitt in that,
and again, Brad Pitt in one of my favorite, most off-putting roles you've ever seen Brad Pitt in, where you're just like, he's a sex symbol? Like, what? And I love him in that role. Really, really good. Just a clarification one more time. These movies are not for the faint of heart. Don't watch these movies with your kids. Don't watch these movies if you're going to find that they're going to stress you out more. Right. But if you're anything like me, watching these kinds of movies in times like this is like a gleeful release. It's a cathartic experience that actually helps me feel less stressed out. There's some pretty disturbing moments in 12 Monkeys. But very, very cool concepts, and it is about a contagion.
Nice.
There were other movies that I could have put on the list, but I decided to keep it to my 6 favorites. So
that's awesome. What movie am I confusing with 12 Monkeys that also has Brad Pitt? That's like the 7 sins, or is it? There's
7.
It's just 7. Okay, those squished together.
Yeah, that's a very different movie.
For some reason.
Yeah, 12 Monkeys, Brad Pitt's not the star. He's more of a supporting character. And in 7, it's Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, and they're both like detectives. And then, they must have come out in similar times, or I may have watched them around the same time because they squished together in my head. I might be brave enough to watch that if I could find it. 12 Monkeys?
Yeah.
12 Monkeys is fun. I love that movie. And it's got such a cool, like, whoa, mind-blowing ending. 7 is dark. It's Darren Aronofsky, who's one of my favorite filmmakers. He's up there with the Wachowskis. And so I love that movie, but it's definitely not relevant to what we're going through now. But 12 Monkeys is just like weird and surreal enough that it's sort of like, Kill Bill, where Kill Bill has that like over the top violence and gore, but because it's so weird and over the top and surreal that it's almost cartoonish.
Yes.
And it's often less disturbing for people than things that are less gory but more real. Yeah. I find 12 Monkeys is a little bit, it straddles that edge where you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, this can't be real. It's not like Outbreak and Contagion where you're like, this is going to happen, or it is happening.
Yeah. I dig that as an approach of making things so hyper saturated in color or too crisp that it becomes more like a dream. Or
12 Monkeys is very dreamlike. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. All right. We did two lists. The list where you might want to feel better at the end, and then this other one where if you're into that sort of thing, you want to get
movies
deeply
apocalyptic and contagion movies for masochists.
Yeah. Oh, we have a suggestion. I don't know when that popped in. Check out Maggie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I haven't.
Movie.
Yeah, I heard about that, and like I have always held out the idea that Arnold Schwarzenegger could act if you gave him a chance.
Yeah.
And that was a movie where I thought that maybe they were going to do that. But I have not seen it. Who said that?
Denise Rex.
Well, thank you, Denise. It's not showing up in my, I see that she's watching, but I'm not seeing it in my list here.
Yeah. So another suggestion from
good zombie movies are, the zombie genre got so saturated that they had to go meta and weird at some point, but that one looked really interesting. So
yeah, on the uplifting zombie shows, I actually did give this as a recommendation recently because of the situation, was iZombie from the CW, and it is, there's a zombie outbreak in Seattle, and a woman who is a pathologist for the police department becomes a zombie. And so this is a buddy cop show. The way that she solves crimes with this cop that comes down and is usually like, what do you find in this autopsy? She eats the brains, and then she takes on aspects of that person's personality, and she also has access to their memories. And so they go on adventures solving crimes.
Amazing.
So good.
As far as like sort of lighthearted apocalyptic things, there's a show I watched called Daybreak that my friend Morgan, who you know as well, shout out Morgan. Morgan turned me on to, and he loved it. I didn't love it as much as he did. I thought it was good. But my girlfriend watched that recently too, and she also really enjoyed Daybreak. So that's very lighthearted and fun, and has Matthew Broderick in it in a fabulous role.
Heck yeah.
Right. That one's good. That one's fun.
Well, so these were the suggestions. If you have suggestions for us, go ahead and type them in the places where you can type things.
Or just let us know what you're watching and what you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
Because everybody's watching more stuff than ever before right now. Almost everybody.
So time is ripe for TVing deeply.
TV deeply, folks.
Yep. I've been Adrianne.
I am still Nicholas Rave.
And there we did it. We did this thing. We shall see you the next time we do a thing.
We'll be back next week. Have fun in your quarantine, everybody.
Yay. Good luck with that. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.